Welcome back to another episode of the Huxley Morton Podcast, where the show where each week we speak to pharma company owners and industry leaders sharing their stories of personal and professional growth. This week, I am joined by Carlos Martin. Carlos, I believe that your title now is the Chief Commercial Officer and Head of International at Rocket Pharma. But in your own words, if you could just clarify that and give me the thumbs up, that would be very much appreciated.
Hi, James. Good morning in the US and good afternoon in the UK. Thank you for having me in your program, which I've been following now for a little bit when you told me that we would be speaking. So yes, Carlos Martin, I joined Rocket Pharma about 2 years ago from Novartis Oncology. In Rocket Pharma, my main task is helping the company transition from a purely clinical stage to a commercial stage biotech. We are a highly specialized company with treating rare conditions, like so rare that there is no therapeutic alternative for these kids. Most of the conditions are pediatric, and we do so with multiple modalities in gene therapy, specifically with ex vivo or in vivo gene therapies.
Interesting. Well, look, we'll certainly dive into that side of things. I guess the pediatrics is always an interest to me, as is gene therapy, which seems to be a big hot topic, I guess, in the industry at the moment. But at first, perhaps take you on a trip and take the audience on a trip down memory lane, as it may be. Look, you're now, as I say, the Chief Commercial Officer at Rocket Pharma. How did we get here? I mean, did you always want to get into this industry? How did your career first start out, Carlos?
So I am an economist by degree. I took my training or my college degree in Barcelona. So my first jobs were actually in consumer goods. I worked for Frito-Lay and also Agrolime, a Spanish food group, in both the national market or domestic market in Spain, but also international markets in emerging markets, mainly in the Middle East. I lived in China for a couple of years. But then in 2000, I received a Fulbright scholarship to come to study in the US, where I did an MBA in Thunderbird, Arizona. And over the course of that program, I was very fortunate to do an internship program at Eli Lilly in neuroscience. And that opened my eyes and opened to the possibility to join the pharma world. After I completed the master's degree, I joined Schering-Plough Pharmaceuticals, New Jersey, where I was doing hepatology and virology, both in sales and marketing. And after 3 years in that company, I joined Novartis in 2005, where I spent almost 16 years in multiple roles in commercial strategy and also country management, mainly in oncology.
Fine. So it's, I guess, look, at least you chased the good weather, going from Barcelona to Arizona, as it may be, nice sunny locations. But what was it that perhaps hooked you into the pharma and biotech world? Was there anything in particular? Where did that interest come from, do you think? Or can you recall?
Yeah, no, I definitely recall. And it wasn't that simple or easy, I have to say. So one of the reasons why I came to the US is because I wanted to get into an innovation-driven industry, either high tech or technology of some sort. And definitely biotech and pharma, they were very high in the list already, because the US is the one driving the industry still today. The second reason is that actually my family had many doctors. Like my dad had worked in the pharma industry. I had 2 uncles that they were gastroenterologists and oncologists in southern Spain. So I was always very intrigued and attracted by medicine. And I even myself had a health issue when I was 7 and 8 years old. And that got me really close to understand medicine and my medical condition, which was a bone-related condition in my spine.
Wow.
So I was always very keen to know about science, biology, and medicine. But then at the same time, when I joined the pharma industry, although it was intimidating for me because I don't have a biology degree or a medical degree, I was really fortunate to have very good colleagues that they helped me understand how to read the industry in a way, how to read a trial, how to read a clinical protocol, how to read a medical paper, and then how to think from a commercial point of view on how do we bring these therapies to patients at the end of the day. So then I became fascinated and in love. Somebody told me when I was lining up for an interview with Schering-Plough that the moment you get in, it's almost impossible to get out of this industry. I think that happened to me.
Fair enough. And was it, I guess, let you credit a couple of colleagues at that time for helping you navigate that piece without having the biology or related degree. Just how difficult was that? Because I guess as a recruiter professional myself, often people are very much stressed about the degree that they have. But I sometimes tell them, look, if you listen to our podcast, there's individuals that haven't had the relevant degrees or they've just taken a different path. How did you find that at that time? I'm just curious about that side of things, I guess.
Well, I found it, I have to say at the beginning, it was when I received this, I don't know, 200 pages report in schizophrenia and bipolar mania at Eli Lilly on my desk. I thought they had made a mistake. I said, okay, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how I can even read this document. And then Lori, at the time, the manager I had for my internship at Eli Lilly, she understood that I needed some basic training on how to read and how to structure the document in a way that then I could perform on my project. That was a very basic marketing project on how do you have a global scorecard for the branding that we were designing at the time for Cyprexa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was key. That was key for me. Yeah.
Fine. And was it so? I guess once you got that, I guess training, it was a case of just accepting that you didn't know everything and getting on with it, by the sounds of things, right?
Yeah, and also you need to find what are your strengths, right? I know that my strength is not medical science, right? But at the same time, I know that in any market, the first thing you need to understand what is the unmet need that you're trying to fulfill, right? At the same time, what is the experience that these patients and doctors are going to have with your product? Like it's something that you do almost naturally in consumer goods. You're thinking all the time, how do you fulfill an experience and also an unmet need from patients? To say that in pharma, we are fortunate because the mission and that fulfilling the unmet need is very easy, right? Because you are talking about a medical condition and patients really need it. So you don't need to create a new unmet need. Is right there. So then the thinking turns into, okay, I don't need to create an unmet need, but how do I have a system that the therapy is accessible, available, and appreciated by the different users? Right? Another aspect that was new to me, it was the number of stakeholders that you have to deal with, because the role of prescriptor, which is classic in marketing, in pharma is probably at the center of what you do, because the prescriptor is the doctor, which is not the user, or is not even the payer of the medication. But the moment you understand all the different roles along the patient journey and what the patient goes through and what the doctors go through with the patient, then suddenly you start seeing all the opportunities you have to make a difference for these patients.
I guess so. It sounds like it's more of that bird's eye view, if you like, kind of trying to take a step back, and the oversight of that journey is what you're talking about by the sounds of things.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's understanding that like in any other market, you need to have a buyer and a seller, right? The seller is somehow clear. It is the pharma industry. The buyers are many. You need to have buyers from a patient point of view, family and caregivers, if you are speaking about pediatrics. You have the doctor, but also the team from the doctor, because if you have a complex therapeutic, like the ones we have at Rocket, you need to have a high level of engagement with the nursing staff and the care managers and the case managers at the hospital. And then there is a third level of buyers, which are the insurance companies, right? Either private or public payers. That we, for instance, in the US, you have the NIH. In the US, we have Medicare and CMS, but also private health insurance companies. They are part of the patient journey and also the financial journey, right? There are financial flows that they vary a lot, right? But is particularly complex when it comes to the different flows that you have to make these therapies available.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of your specific role then, I guess it sounds like you spent a lot of time with Novartis, where did you say you kind of wearing a few hats there? And so probably picked up, a wealth of experience. How did the Rocket Pharma move come about? What was there something about either the company, the management team? What landed you at Rocket? I'd be interested to know that before we come on to your specific role.
Yeah. So I think you can, the motivation always comes in two ways, in my opinion, right? You have it intrinsically in you. You know that, you know or not, maybe you're fine in a big company, but eventually you know that if you really have the internal, let's say, craving or bug for an entrepreneurial project, you have it. You cannot move on or move away from that. So I had it because actually my family, my dad has been an entrepreneur all his life, and he was always an inspiration, people, companies that he created. And I think I grew up with that. And even at Novartis, I was always looking for those more entrepreneurial projects, right? And like when I went to Chile and we had to create a new oncology business unit, or when I joined AAA, a nuclear medicine company that Novartis acquired, and I was part of that, in a way, a smaller unit. And then the move with Rocket, it was part of that journey that I was already experiencing for a long time at Novartis, and in the way I was making my career decisions. Right? And then the second reason why you join is because at some point it happens that they call you, you're approached by them. At the same time, there were some trigger factors, like it was right after COVID, when I think many people wonder, okay, is this what I really want to do in the next 5 to 10 years? No, what if all the dreams I had of joining a more entrepreneurial project come my way? Would you do it? And I think I was mentally already in that place to make that call and that decision. And then I think I was very fortunate when it happened, right? Because I joined Rocket at probably the right time for the company, but it was also the right time for me in my career. I had been 16 years and a long time at Novartis, a company that I thank a lot for my development and my growth, and I still have a lot of friends. I was last week in ASH in San Diego, and I ran into a lot of friends from Novartis.
Nice.
But the project at Rocket is also very special, right? Because we have therapies that are very unique for these kids that they're probably going to have to live with their condition for a long time until they progress. A fatal situation, or not even that, because in some of the conditions we treat, patients can pass away rather very quickly after birth.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a combination of factors, but I think the main and the most important one probably is that I was already in my mind thinking that one day I wanted to be in an entrepreneurial project like this.
What characteristics do you think that you've had then? Because you referenced kind of the fact that your father was kind of entrepreneurial minded. Is there anything that you've kind of either picked up from him just over the years, or anything that, you know, people, because sometimes people say stuff to you and they say, you know, Carlos, you're very much this, or they almost give you the label, don't they? And sometimes you don't think about it. But is there anything that you've been labeled as, or, you know, for those who are watching might be thinking, you know what, I've been thinking about this, I'm in a similar position. Do I have that same sort of bug, as it may be, that Carlos has?
Yeah, so when it comes to your question, what did I get from my dad and also my mom? But from my dad, I think the main thing is that you need to look at things in a positive way, right? I am a natural optimist. And yes, you have ups and downs, but everything is a cycle at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you need to have that, you need to visualize that end in mind, right? And we saw that in my dad, that he will never give up. And he doesn't give up. Still today, he's over 80 and he still have ideas or even a small project. So is that attitude you have inside you of not wanting to give up, but not because you're having a hard time, you need to keep going. It's not that you see the good side to what you're doing. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. All the enterprises that he created didn't pan out, didn't play out, but then he restarted a new one. So I think that resilience and grit, as they say, and being optimistic is what I had from him. You can translate that into being more, let's say, risk tolerant or willing to make those decisions. But at the same time, is all part of the same. Is that resilience and how do you visualize what's coming next?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, that kind of, I guess, explains why you made the jump, why you relish in that jump from someone like Novartis, huge name, to someone like Rocket, where there is a more entrepreneurial company. What's the mission at Rocket? You know, it sounds like, the fact that there's pediatrics, there's gene therapy, it sounds innovative, it sounds focused in that particular area. If you were to describe kind of what, that mission is that drives you on a daily basis, because anyone joining a project like that is normally quite driven by the cause. How would you describe that?
Yeah, I think that, well, the mission at Rocket is to eventually cure rare diseases, right, through gene therapies. Like in any biology experiment, right, and medical science, sometimes you're 100% successful, like it is the case with one of our therapies for AD1. Sometimes you are 85% successful, or sometimes less. I mean, science is like that. But to me, what really makes the day when I come to the office is thinking that we are very close to have commercially viable therapeutics for patients, right? And that to me is what really makes the day, when you see these kids' faces, the ones that we have treated, that they're doing well, and that they don't have anything else but these therapies, right? The second thing is that the company is extremely focused, and I didn't see that level of focus in all areas of a bigger company like Novartis, because they are bigger, right, and they have multiple and competing priorities. Rocket is a company that is solely dedicated to rare conditions with treated with gene therapies.
Yeah.
So that level of focus I enjoy, because then you can gain a lot of depth in addition to the breadth that you need. In a lot of depth, and you become an expert in that particular disease area and in that particular modality, right? And I think that's where the intrinsic value of the company is, that ability to master the rare disease space with gene therapies.
Okay, very, very interesting. As I say, it sounds like an exciting area to work in, just with the nature of what you're doing. Your role then as Chief Commercial Officer, what does that entail? I mean, because it sounds like quite a broad title, but it sounds like there's quite a focused mission. So I'm just wondering, what are the steps that you're looking to take in order to, I guess, take the company and make it into a commercial stage biotech, as you mentioned at the top of the show?
Yeah, so the steps that we're taking is building a team, right? So we've been building capabilities already for the last couple of years. With that, they're targeted the key areas that you need to develop a gene therapy, a commercially viable gene therapy company.
Yeah.
So gene therapies in themselves, like any advanced therapeutic, is a balancing between a process and a product or a therapeutic. So for that reason, the level of service to sustain that process is extremely important. So around that idea on how do you deliver the medication with a good level of service, because it's complex, right? And then bringing in the therapeutic to drive that patient treatment is where we are balancing and building our model. And you could see recently the gene therapy from CRISPR Therapeutics and Vertex for sickle cell disease was approved. And the first thing that they talked about is how do they support patients to receive these therapies with a good level of service. So we're actually thinking along the same lines. And then there is another aspect, which is how do we make this therapy accessible, right? From a reimbursement point of view, how do we support the patients in that journey to make the therapy accessible? And then the third element is how do we educate physicians not only in our product, but also in the rare conditions? Because let's not forget that these conditions are extremely rare. You are speaking about maybe a handful, like hundreds of patients, and not thousands of patients for some of these conditions. In our case, other gene therapy companies, right? So educating about the condition is as important, sometimes if not more, than the therapeutic itself. And that's how we are thinking about going to market.
Wow. Okay, look, it sounds like there's a lot involved. I mean, you've not been there kind of anywhere near as long as Novartis. How's it been going since you came on board? Is there any particular, if you were to give us a snapshot of kind of the situation at present and kind of your own personal, accompanied with the company goals and what's been achieved, is there anything that stands out for yourself or kind of that roadmap that you're following?
So if I understand the question correctly, is like why me, right? And why? So I have been working in rare diseases for a long time at Novartis Oncology in the US also at a global level when we launched or Jakafi in the US for myelofibrosis, partnering with Insight. Then I had the rare disease franchise from a commercialization point of view in the US for multiple rare conditions in oncology. And then my last role was in advanced therapeutics in nuclear medicine for neuroendocrine tumors that were also rare by themselves, but at the same time, probably the most important part in nuclear medicine that I learned is how do you go about a complex therapeutic. So in a way, I was ticking, as they say, all these boxes, but I think what really made the difference is that I really connected with the team at Rocket because we found that we had common passions and missions about these rare conditions and patients.
Yeah.
You know, that entrepreneurial spirit, like you get into it with all your energy and an illusion, an ambition for a project. It will go well, but it's not going to be a walk in the park at the same time. You need to be ready for maybe not the best days, and sometimes it's hard because you don't have the same level of infrastructure than in a bigger company. Although a good level of infrastructure is not the same. So that transition is always a journey that I would advise anybody wanting to join a smaller company to really think through, visualize how that transition is going to play. Because sometimes people are not ready. They are not ready to tolerate that level of, let's say, uncertainty, that level of change. You need to adapt to a different way to do things. I think people in smaller companies in general, could be biotech or not, they tend to be more resolutive. You need to wear multiple hats, as they say.
Yeah.
In case, having worked in a small country, Latin America, or in smaller units, and Novartis already gave me a flavor of what is that, and I was okay with it. But some people like to be in bigger structures and companies, right? So I would advise that people make that reflection because once you're in, you need to be all in. There is no way back.
I got you. I think there was a slight misunderstanding on the question, but actually I like the question that you've answered there, Carlos, as to why it makes me feel like I've got my recruitment hat on for a second. But what would also be useful to know is, I guess, how's it going? So you've been there 2 years. When you walked in the door, has it been what you expected, and how has it gone? If you were to summarize kind of whether it's going well, the challenges, the wins, what has it looked like?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying, James. So it's going great. I have to say we've been building, as I said, the commercial function with an excellent team of marketeers, value and access, patient services, trade, and I'm really enjoying it. We're also building the medical affairs function. We're also integrating more commercial strategy elements into clinical development and how do we build our target product profiles. So it's going well. The company is shaping up very nicely. We're growing at a good pace. We are well funded, and we have. I think the headwinds that the biotech industry is been having so far, Rocket has been navigating them very well. I think we're going to start having tailwinds hopefully very soon next year as an industry overall, especially in the rare diseases space and gene therapies. So for me, I am enjoying it every day. I have to say, I'm very pleased.
Good to hear. Well, it's good to hear that things are going well. And you mentioned funding there. I know that's typically one of the biggest challenges for any company in your position. I guess, is that still an ongoing factor for yourselves, or is there any other challenges that are, whether it's to do with the therapeutics or the therapies themselves? What's the biggest challenge that you've, I guess, faced or are facing along the way?
So the company, as I said, is well funded, and I believe we are in a good place. The industry overall is facing headwinds, right? Because the cost it went up extremely quickly, probably at the fastest pace in a very long time.
Yeah.
And that for biotech, improved revenue companies is always a challenge, right? The cost of capital is one of the main drivers. You have to estimate your valuations, your NPVs, and things like that. So right now, at the same time, the Fed is taking out of the market a big chunks of money almost every day or every week.
Yeah.
And that's also impacting the access to capital, right? And how much is there of Is there that capital to fund the company? It is true also that in 2021, 22, there was an exuberance in the market, in biotech space and in the technology space overall. So I think those days are gone, and I think probably we will land into a situation that is more reasonable, both for financial markets to have an economy that is healthy and financial markets that are healthy, and also for companies to be well capitalized. So
Yeah.
so that it's not black and white. I think we need to land in an equilibrium where companies are well funded, but at the same time we have healthy financial markets. And I think the Fed is doing a good job in being maybe restrictive and not easy for everybody and for all the actors in the market, but I think eventually we will land in a good place.
Okay. Look, so in terms of, I guess, your own personal goals for the company and at the company, helping them achieve that, commercial stage status. If we spoke again in, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years, have you got an idea as to what success would have perhaps looked like, in terms of whether it's, approvals of anything, certain stages, hitting certain milestones? I'm assuming that these sort of things are perhaps mapped out. And please don't talk about anything that you can't necessarily talk about that is behind the scenes. But what would, if we spoke again in 18 months, 2 years, what would that, and things have gone well, what are you going to be telling me at that time?
Yeah, I mean, how success will look like is that the moment we receive approval for our first products, right?
Wow.
Success will look like by seeing commercial patients or patients in the commercial setting being treated successfully and in a sustainable way, that we can do this over and over again, improving our efficiencies, learning about the process, because these are complex processes, opening clinical sites that are specialized at a commercial setting to treat these patients. And the third element will be having a team that is strong and growing in the commercial realm at Rocket.
Yeah.
Right? That to me is how success will look like. But first and foremost is to have patients treated with these gene therapies in a sustainable way. That means that they have a place to go, a place to receive support and education, right? Because it's a big journey for them to embark in any gene therapy and not only Rockets. And to make sure that we can replicate that over and over again to all patients that they are eligible for these therapies. Yeah.
Nice. And what would you, I guess, having made that jump from someone like Novartis to get involved with this more entrepreneurial product or project, should I say, what will that feel like, Carlos, if you've achieved that and, there are patients being treated? Have you, I mean, you may well tell me you think about it every day. You may well be so bogged down sometimes in work as sometimes we get. What will that feel like? Have you given it much thought?
So the question is about what would happen after we achieve all this with me.
How will you feel, I guess?
Well, I would like to get going and to launch as many products as possible in this field. And I feel that is completely possible. We just need to keep going and making the investments in the right place.
Awesome stuff. And look, I guess throughout this journey, Carlos, it sounds like there's been international travel, different education levels, steep learning curve, getting involved, taking an entrepreneurial leap, as it may be. Is there, I guess, one thing that you feel that you've learned about yourself? Maybe it's a bit of a personal question, but have you noticed any particular change in your own mindset or anything like that? Or was it kind of always there and something that you've picked up inherently through your family, both your mum and your dad, that you've referenced?
No, I think I've mentioned it already. Probably the main thing has been the entrepreneurial spirit, right? That I saw with my parents, and also all the projects that then I was looking at. I think an experience that really impacted me a lot in a positive way was the fact that I lived in China in 98, 99, and 2000, right before coming to the US, at a time that China was emerging. It was a beautiful moment in the country. And that was probably the most impactful experience that I saw to develop that level of energy and seeing that level of energy and dynamism in a country.
Yeah.
I think I got that back when I saw that, you know, and every time I think or I go back to China, I see that level of energy that is very inspirational. Then in the US you have that too, but in a much more structured way, right? The markets are more mature, but it is true that you have more access to know-how, to capital, and to systems that are more sophisticated, at least that they were more sophisticated than at the time in China. I think China today is catching up very quickly with the US.
Awesome stuff. Well, look, it sounds like, yeah, one hell of a journey, really, Carlos. A lot of aspects involved. And I guess that probably is why the role of a chief commercial officer is quite broad and varied, and you have to pull each kind of stakeholder and individual together. I guess moving forward for Rocket, what are we likely to see over the next, you know, if we were to talk headcount or anything like that in terms of countries and kind of, because that seems like your wheelhouse that you've excelled at before is kind of these international expansions. Is that on the cards for Rocket as well? What are the plans for the company? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah. The mission at Rocket is, I mean, we always remain the same. We're looking to bring in therapies for patients in need beyond the US or in the European Union. Because these are very complex therapeutics, we need to see what is the right model to do so, right? Our intent is to build a company that will be a leading company in rare disease gene therapies, and we have no limits. I mean, we've been approached because of the type of therapies and disease areas that we target that they're very unique. We've been approached by companies in many places like the Middle East, Latin America, Japan, and we are looking at what is the best way to serve those geographies. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all goes. And, you know, I guess for the work that you're doing, I guess probably everyone tuning in, whether they're watching or listening, will be willing you on, I guess. So we'll have to stay tuned to see how it develops, perhaps get you back on the show to see if we can talk about that success down the line.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. But look, before I let you go, look, we always close the show with a bit of a quick fire questions round. So we'll come on to how to contact yourself and Rocket shortly, but I'll kick us off here with the quick fire round. And my first question would be about taking you back to your younger years. Wasn't necessarily, kind of didn't get the degree in biology, but if you were to give yourself one piece of advice, Carlos, to your younger self, what would that be?
It depends how young, right? But I'll definitely say, hey, just follow your passion. Follow your. Don't follow necessarily the scripted patterns that you see coming out of college and university. Not that I regret. I think all the jobs I had, they made sense to me at the time. But it is true that I have to look for a way to fund myself. I mean, I also funded part of my education in Barcelona, so I had to find a job, right, with an income to do so. Don't delay. If you really like entrepreneurial projects, I guess the main advice is don't delay for too long, because then it may happen or not, and the more advanced you are in your career, the more reluctant you might be, right? So don't delay.
Awesome. I like that. And it's clear that you've kind of followed your own advice on that one, whether you know it or not. And look, my next question, Carlos, is about whether there's one book, resource, website, whatever it may be, one resource that you would perhaps recommend for our audience.
Yeah, it's interesting. There is a book that I really liked that was written by one of the managers I had back in the day in Frito-Lay. Miguel Jadot is like fall in love with your own future, and it's about you writing it. I really relate to that because I think that you get advice from a lot of people and mentors and coaches, but if you don't know where you're going, you probably need to pause, take a step back, and think about that, because you need to design your own journey. Don't follow preset recipes from anybody. You can get advice and try to learn, But I think the most important thing is when you really own it, right? And you have that level of autonomy that goes with a meaning that you go after, right? Then the second, that's a book, right? That it was inspirational to me. And then talk to people. That's what actually helped me a lot to reflect and have ideas. Be open. Don't get yourself in a cage. You know?
I was going to say, it goes very much hand in hand with your first answer here, Carlos, really, doesn't it? Kind of like not holding back, follow what you feel is right and just trust in the process.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So talk to people, share your ideas. Maybe you're wrong, maybe you're right, but just don't be scared about sharing what you have in mind, right? Because you don't have all the answers. And you don't need to have all the answers. What I think it's important is that you have a motivation. Like why are you doing what you're doing? And then that will help you to be probably more resilient over time. How to get there is a day-to-day job, right? How do you get there? So talking to people, be open, and also be open about sharing your feedback and be generous about that. And then the third one, yes, like many people, I went to school, I read many books, but probably what nowadays is helping me, I have to say, is podcast like this one, listening to other people that they're all also looking for a way to make progress and improve and to make a difference and make an impact either in people's careers or in a particular industry that you're working on. So podcasts, they help me a lot. And also looking at YouTube videos of people that you admire. No, I remember that probably the ones that really hooked me into seeing people in these videos, it was looking at Steve Jobs before he passed away and all the things that he was trying to communicate to younger people or within his company and how he will all the time challenge the status quo, but based on his beliefs, right?
Yeah.
He was a person that was very much focused on his beliefs and his passions, right? And not necessarily how much money you make or how do you build a company. If for him, meaning was at the center. And that was to me very inspirational.
I like that. I can see how this has molded your personality here, Carlos. There's a bit of a theme going on. And what brings me quite nicely on to my next question. It's clear that you're your own man. And I have a feeling I may well know the answer to this because I was browsing at your LinkedIn profile earlier. But outside of work, because we're not just work. Most of us got families and things. But what's your favorite thing outside of work?
Well, my passion, I have to say, is my friends and family. That's at the core. No, Violeta and Samuel, they are 7 and 13 years old, and then my wife Catalina. So my family is at the core of what I do and what I want to do. But also my friends, right? So I became independent when I was 18 years old. I moved from southern Spain to Barcelona, and then I never went back, right, to my, let's say, original, like seminal family in southern Spain. So my friends became my family in a way. And I live with many people, right? And then you learn a lot about that camaraderie with them. And then sports. When I was, as I said at the beginning of the conversation, I had a condition in my spine when I was 7 years old. So that led me to start swimming very early. And then I became a competitive swimmer in Spain. And then I took a break when I went to college, but then I went back into swimming in my late 20s in New York. And then I fell in love with open water swimming. So every time I can, I do an open water swim I did many in Chile, in the Pacific Ocean, and then here in the Atlantic Ocean in New York, and also in Spain.
This is the piece that I saw, Carlos. I saw various achievements of this, and this. I was like, wow, did not know this. So yeah, absolutely. I was very impressed when I saw that.
Yeah, it's one of my passions, and I think when I'm swimming, it's that moment that you are zen and you are really in the zone for me. So that's kind of it's not only therapeutic, but it's also a way to connect with nature in a way that sometimes we lose, especially if you live in big cities like in New York, like me. Is that connection with nature, and that's what brings me there.
Fair play, fair play. Well, it'll be interesting to see how you round this up then with my last question, which is about, I guess, your golden rule for both life and business. I always almost feel like with the 3 previous answers you've given me, you've nailed that already. But if you were to summarize, what would you say is the number 1 golden rule for yourself?
is be yourself. And don't be anybody else. And don't be anything that you don't want to be. There's no time for that. Like you need to be yourself. Don't waste time being something or somebody else.
Very good. Well, Carl, it's been a pleasure having you on. For anyone looking to learn more about either yourself, see your swimming prowess on your LinkedIn profile, learn more about Rocket Pharmaceuticals, what's the best way to look yourself and the company up, website, etc.?
Yeah, the best way would be through the company website, definitely looking at the wonder therapies that we're working on in both clinical development, but also pre-commercialization. And then about me, you can always find me in LinkedIn, and I'll be pleased to help anybody that wants to also build a career in an entrepreneurial space.
Awesome stuff. Well, pleasure having you on the show. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Looking forward to hearing your next podcast.
Cheers.